Hello everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thank you so much for joining me here. I hope you're having an amazing day. We're going to take a look here at Bitcoin, see what's going on, of course, help understand best practice, big picture, the whole 9 yards, and get you on the right track for where tomorrow might bring us. At this point, it does look like it wants to continue to the downside, but we'll of course be able to take a look at that here together and explain why. We also have some interesting behavior on the dollar exchange, the US dollar. We'll look at that as well. So if you're new to the channel, not a financial advisor, love teaching people to trade, hope you can learn something here today. My goal is to help you become a better trader. So in that sense, I have a trading academy, community, and signal group. Link in the description below if you haven't checked that out already. I offer academy, which is really awesome. That's where a lot of people, or the reason why people are coming over right now, to learn as much as they can in this downtime. Furthermore, I send out signals for every single trade that I take. We opened some short signals here recently with the anticipation of the price coming back down further. So again, I'll explain kind of why here in a moment, but generally speaking, that's where we're at. All right, that being said, let's go ahead and take a look. So first of all, on the daily, pretty standard stuff here. We're seeing this slow increase with higher lows so far to the upside. Now, there's a handful of reasons why I believe the price might come down a little bit further, but generally speaking, at this point, we're underneath the 20-day set moving average of 50, the 200, the whole 9 yards there. We're pretty much all across the board. We're at a position where we're below pretty much every single moving average. On the larger time frames too, if we look at the monthly, we can see that we are still testing this level here. If you look at the simple moving average 50, it hasn't closed yet, but it's getting darn close. And closure underneath 21,000, roughly 300, would be disadvantageous, kind of showing us that we are stuck underneath that type of resistance level. Okay, so again, that's kind of where we're at there. We don't want to close below that. Hopefully we can get a rally in the next couple of days to get a closure above that, but that's not a great sign. Okay, we're also still very strong underneath 50 on the RSI. So in other words, when we've gone underneath 50 in the RSI in the past, it's been very, very short, a very brief amount of time. And this is a kind of new behavior, so to speak. So it does imply we could see further downside, right? And it would make sense that we see just a little bit lower before we hit our bottom. Again, that's just my theory there. I think 14,000 is a pretty realistic estimate. And that's what this line is here as well. That was basically a previous resistance level before Bitcoin went parabolic. All right, so again, that's kind of where we're at there. And then, of course, the weekly kind of gives us a similar narrative where we can kind of see that we're stuck under 30 in the RSI, holding underneath that resistance level. And that's not really a great sign either. And then, of course, we're well below the 200-day SMA also on the weekly. So to be under a lot of key level, simple moving averages, those are basically key level resistances, is not a great sign. It just kind of reaffirms the fact that we are going to have to continue this downtrend until it breaks to the upside. So good news is we could see a test of that resistance level, or that channel, that descending channel. We could see a retest of that in a couple of weeks, perhaps even a couple of months. But it's an inevitability. It will turn back around. It will recover. It's just a matter of how low can it go. You know, like Bitcoin's playing the limbo game right now. it's really, really, really low. Anyways. That being said, let's go ahead and take a look here at the daily. Something to kind of note, and let's go ahead and double check this here as well. TD sequential, I think we hit up to a 7 here recently. So that does explain why we might be seeing a little bit further downside as well. Because a lot of times when you get to this, I wouldn't say it's overexhausted by 7 days by any stretch, but we had a pretty decent increase. So if you look at the lowest point to the highest point, you see a 24% increase overall from Bitcoin. That's pretty substantial for a Bitcoin movement. It doesn't seem like a lot because the price is so low, but that's the reason why it is a lot, because the price is so low. All right, so in that sense, that's kind of where we're at there in that regard, where there's a lot of profits to be taken. So I'm not surprised to see some red days here. That's very standard stuff. How much lower can it go? Well, I think we might see a retest of 20,000. I think that's a probability at this point. So ultimately, not a terrible situation we're in right now, but again, I think we're still going to be range bound between 20,000 and possibly even 22,000 as a round number, or 21.7 essentially, the key level resistance the price has had trouble breaking through, and probably be range bound for a little while until it decides it wants to go up or down from there. Too early to tell on that sense, but the feeling that we're getting here today is that the price will continue lower, just based on the overall momentum. And another thing to look at too is the pattern that we're seeing here so far with the 4 hour. We're consistently seeing lower lows, right? Well, not super consistent, there's been 2, but we are seeing lower highs, and this is the 3rd time that we've seen the price action kind of get rejected when it tries to come back up. So, there's somewhat of a resistance shelf there. We can see that in the 4 hour. There's also 50 in the RSI holding the price action down. You can see where it came up here to try to break through, could not, and now we're down, we're trending lower. So I do feel like we're going to see a little bit of a sell-off down closer to 20,000. I think that's probably very likely at this point. So again, just based on that sentiment alone on the 4 hour, the 4 hour definitely looks like it wants to continue to diverge. Okay. Furthermore as well, if we go ahead and take a look at the 1 hour, we can go ahead and see as well. Let's go ahead and double check this. If I remember from before, yeah, we hit an 8. We came up to an 8 here recently. Now we're only 3 hours into this downtrend. So if you see what happened previously, look at this. We went up to an 8, and then we downshifted pretty hard, right? So we could very well see that happen here as well, where this continuation just goes down a little bit further. I would say 20,500 is probably an inevitability, perhaps even lower. Okay, well, again, 20,000 I think is pretty realistic to get a retest of that level. It would be positive to have a retest of 20,000 because I would just reaffirm that as a support level. But once again, the more often you test something, the more likely it is to break to that, to that same direction it's getting tested. So that's kind of where we're at there. Let's go and see where the cloud is telling us. We can see that we have, obviously, if you have a short position, you'd want to have maybe either considered closing it and or leaving it open. In other words, it's kind of 50-50 when the lagging span intersects with the price action. Usually I like to trim 50% of my portfolio or my trade essentially and take some profits and let the rest ride, or sometimes 60, 70, 80% in most cases. So in other words, at this point here, we can see the price come up, get rejected by the cloud, but also we can see the conversion line crossed above the baseline, so that we basically got 1 out of 3 signs here to keep a short position open. But on the same accord, we have a lot of other factors in the big picture that we just looked at, specifically on the 4 hour with lower highs and lower lows, stuck under 50 on the RSI. Those are all things that are pretty strong indications that the price wants to continue to go down. Okay, so again, you always use a combination of different indicators to come to a conclusion. We're not just drawing one conclusion here based on the cloud. We're seeing that we see a lot of other potential for downside as well on other time frames. In fact, there's very few things that are showing support and helping us understand that the price action might continue higher. I think a long position right now would not be ideal, and it's best to kind of anticipate the price will continue lower just based on the overall sense of what we've seen here so far. Again, those are things that I kind of go with. Those are just things that I kind of focus on. And again, you're just building a case, right? I know I say this a lot, but when you're using technical analysis, no, you're right. It's not 100%. A lot of people say it's kind of BS, which I would agree in a small way, because of course, like, how can you truly predict where something's going to go? Well, you truly can't, but what you can do is you can increase your odds of that success rate. So, instead of playing at a 45% advantage, against the house in poker, in this case, you become the house if you do the right things, right? We become that 55%, and that it just increases your odds of success if you look at things correctly. And, history has a tendency of repeating itself. Even though it doesn't always do that, it's a very strong indication that we should experience the price to continue in that same way, right? So, it does feel like the price action wants to continue to progress lower. We're seeing these lower lows and lower highs, and I do think 20,000 would be inevitable in the relative near future. We might even see that today. Again, I hope not in that sense, but hey, again, I also kind of hope so too, because I love dollar cost averaging daily into my position. I do use very small balances. I'm only putting in $20 a day, but it's really averaging me down pretty nice to help, because inevitably the price of Bitcoin will be higher. Supply and demand is a real thing, and at this point, we need to understand that there's a great chance we could see further downside, just based on the overall sense of what we're seeing here so far. So until this trend breaks and we can start seeing higher highs and higher lows, we're not in a position right now to essentially expect that to happen. Okay, so again, that's kind of where we're at there. I hope that you found benefit and this makes sense how I described it. If you want to become a better trader, I explain all this in my Trading Academy and more, of course. I do focus a lot more on the emotional stability of being a good trader, and how it's important to have that as a foundation. So please understand that what we're looking at here is only half the battle. There's a lot more to it, and again, I do teach that as well. So I hope you learned something here once more. Thanks again for your time. We'll see you in the next video. You have a good rest of your day.